people whose lives intersected with an extraordinary moment in time. They were much like the people who gathered in the public square in Jerusalem after Jesus' arrest. They were men and women and children just like we are gathered in church today. The city of Jerusalem was filled with thousands upon thousands of people who had gathered for the Passover festival, celebrating thousands of years prior when God liberated the Hebrew people from Pharaoh in Egypt. And on this particular day, word spread that Jesus had been arrested, and so there were people who gathered in the public square. They gathered where they knew that they would find Pilate, and they gathered to see what would happen to Jesus. Would he be given a long prison sentence? Would he be set free? Would he be sentenced to death? What would Pilate do with Jesus? And as it turns out, Pontius Pilate let the people decide. The fate of Jesus was placed in their hands. Ordinary people. Pilate asked the crowd, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Jesus, Barabbas, or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" And much to our heart today, when we rehear the story, the people said, "Barabbas." And Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" And all of them said, "Let him be crucified." And then Pilate asked, "Why? Why, what evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." The people wrote the script. They condemned Jesus to death. They could have made a different choice and changed the course of history. All they had to do was raise their collective voice and call for freedom. When it was time to speak, each person could have said his name. All that was needed, one word, 2 syllables, Jesus. The people united could have demanded that Jesus be set free. They had one opportunity, and they let it pass. The people who gathered in Jerusalem stood at the crossroads of history. Jerusalem was in Judea, which was a Roman province, a client state in the domain of the Roman Empire. Pontius Pilate was the governor of Judea, and Herod was the king. Pilate and Herod were unsavory characters who were drunk with power. They were ruthless. Remember that it was Herod who beheaded John the Baptist. We see that depicted in movies, but it's a little antiseptic because it's not the same as it really is. But such was the nature of that regime. It was bloody. It was deadly. And Jesus' crucifixion was not a lone execution. Recall that 2 other men, criminals, were put to death along beside him. Just another set of executions for the day. This was a brutal time in history.